Today we have three entry-level German luxury sedans from 2019 or 2020. We have the Audi A3 on the far left, the BMW 330i in the middle, and the Mercedes-Benz A220 on the far right. Now, interestingly enough, the A-Class is just a little bit cheaper than the CLA, and I suspect that if I had made this video about a year ago, the CLA would be on this comparison, not the A-Class. But either way, these are the three cars I've decided to compare against, and I think it'll be interesting. And so we're going to go ahead and start off with the most controversial part of the comparison: styling. And this is objective and pretty much just biased and based on my personal opinion. The A3 on the left again is a 7 out of 10. I really do like the way the A3 looks. It's the perfect size. It's the perfect size. It looks nice, and it's just overall a very decent, attractive looking car without making a bold statement. Now, the BMW 3 Series in the middle, if this were the previous generation 3 Series, I think it would get a 7 or a 6.5. It's a nice car, but it doesn't just quite capture what the Audi would. But this generation of the 3 Series, it looks very nice, and I'm giving it a 7.5 because it looks very modern, and it definitely looks like something. Again, it doesn't make that big of a statement. It doesn't make that big of a splash. It's very concealed, and I like the fact that BMW is not trying to throw it in your face, even with the M3. And then and that gets a 7.5. And then on the right, the A-Class, it gets a 6.5, simply just because it just sort of looks a little more mainstream, like maybe a Volkswagen or a little bit of Kia in it. It doesn't necessarily look like Mercedes, like a C-Class or an E-Class or even a CLA or something. It just looks more like a Jetta, or, a dumbed down version of a C-Class. It doesn't quite give me that Mercedes-Benz feel that I would want. And so I think that's why he gets a 6.5. Now we go on to pricing, and this one is pretty straightforward. The A3, again on the left, starts at $33,300. The 3 Series starts at $40,750, and the A-Class starts at $32,500. Now all of these are within the same points of each other, within maybe half a point or so. The A3 and the A-Class both get 6.5s. The 3 Series gets a 6 just because it's a little bit more expensive. Not a lot more expensive, but just a little bit more expensive. You can get a pretty nice version of the A-Class for about 40 grand. And you're just getting into the 3 Series for 40 grand. Now, I probably should have given this a lower score just because, as soon as you drive it off a lot, you can buy a 3 or 4-year-old 3 Series for about, 18 or 19,000. So depreciation is it's definitely not good on BMWs. And so now that I think about it, it probably should have gotten a lower score. But as it stands, I gave it a 6, and so that's what we're going to roll with. Fuel economy is next, and the A3 gets 26 city, 35 highway. The 3 Series gets the exact same within a mile or two, 26 city, 36 highway. So like just 1 mile a gallon better. And then the A-Class gets 24 city, 35 highway. So it's just a little bit worse. And that couple miles a gallon is enough to dip it down to the 5, just because it still, all of them get good fuel economy for what they offer, but the A-Class, if it had gotten like a mile or two, I would have given it more. But as it stands, 5.5 across the board for everything except the A-Class, which gets a 5. Next up is cargo space, and the A3 has 10 cubic feet of cargo space. The 3 Series has 17, and the A-Class has 8.6. Now, a lot of people may not understand why these cars are getting such low points. But I mean, if you compare this to something like a Civic, which they are all roughly the same size as, they're all compacts with just luxury badges on them. So if we compared this to like a Civic or a Jetta, that would get about 13 or 14. And so for these to get less than 10 or exactly 10, that's not good. So the A3 gets a 4. Um, the 3 Series gets a 5 because, it's approaching 20 in a compact. We're talking about mid-size sedans right here. Even like a Camry, you may get 16, but a 3 Series, which is about the size of a Corolla, is getting 17. So it gets a 5 out of 10. That's actually really good, but I'm doing this for an objective scale. This would get a 10 if I were just comparing it to all compacts. But you got to add SUVs, big SUVs, and trucks and everything else. And so, as it stands, it gets a 5. And then the A class on the right, it gets a 3.5 because 8.6, that's just unacceptable. There are a lot of subcompact sedans that are getting, better than that. They're getting at least 50% more cargo space for half the price or less for this A class, and we can't even get 10. That's just unacceptable. Next up is horsepower, and the A3 has a healthy 184. The 3 Series has 248, and the A class has 188. And all of these are for the base model. We're not going anywhere like the M3 or, the RS3, none of that. This is just the base level, what you would get if you just bought the stock version of them. And so, like I said, the A class, or rather the A3, it gets a 4 out of 10 just because, I mean, it's a pretty healthy number. But there are some cars that are getting better horsepower, such as the 3 Series. We're looking at 248. So that's over 50 more horsepower for an entry-level luxury sedan. It has 248, like I just said. And so it gets a 5.5 out of 10. And the A class has 188 horsepower, and it gets a 4 just because they're within 4 horsepower. The A3 and the A class are within 4 horsepower of each other. Like, that's not even a lawnmower difference. And so as it stands, 4, 5.5, and a 4 across the board. Next up is acceleration. This is 0 to 60 or 0 to 100 for everyone else who is not American. The A3 does it in about 5.5 seconds. The 3 Series does it in 7.1 seconds, which is surprising. And the A class does it in 10.3 seconds. Now, I couldn't find official 0 to 60s, but I did scavenge around some, shall we say, shady websites, and I found these. These are within a model year of each other. I'm hoping that they're not too off, but this is probably the least accurate, the least accurate of all of them, and so please don't go and comment, oh, well, the new 3 Series does it in 6.2, because, like I said, I scavenged for about an hour looking for 0 to 60 times for these cars, and this is the best I could find, so I'm sorry. Anyway, and the A class, like I said, does it in 10.3. The 3 Series does it in 7.1, and the A3 does it in 5.5, giving them the A3 a 6 out of 10, the 3 Series a 5 out of 10, and the A class a 3.5 out of 10. Now, I know that Mercedes, they kind of just dumbed down the version of the A class so it could just be a budget kind of a car. But I mean, 10.3 seconds 0 to 60 time. Now we're approaching Mirage territories, like Mitsubishi Mirage, Honda Fit territories in a Mercedes. This is the same company that can give you an AMG car that can do it in about 3 or less. And then the A class just does it in a little over 10. That is unacceptable. It really should get a 1, but I was being generous by giving it a 3.5 because I didn't want to be like Doug DeMuro with the Doug score, which everyone criticizes. Anyway, but that's how it stands, a 6, a 5, and a 3.5, because 10.3 seconds is just ridiculous. There are some compact cars that could do that faster, such as a Honda Civic. We're even talking about Corollas that can do it in the high 9 or mid 9 seconds. And this thing is doing it in 10.3. That's just ridiculous. Next, we have interior and technology. I rounded these all together, and I've been in each and every one of these cars, the A3, the 3 Series, and the A-Class. They are all pretty comfortable, but the A3 gets a 6. It has decent technology, and everything looks fine, but I just couldn't give it any higher because this is still, we're talking about a budget kind of car. It's not anything that's going to give you all the features that you want. Now, it does have good features for the money and good comfort for the money, but there are a lot of cars that could do it better, but you're obviously paying more than a house for those kinds of cars. So as it stands, the A3 gets a 6. The 3 Series gets a 5.5. Is just as comfortable, if not more. It's got a very nice infotainment system, very nice to touch interior, but reliability is going to be a little bit of an issue because, yeah, it's very expensive to maintain. Things are going to break. You're going to have to keep constantly replacing parts, which is going to cost a lot of money. Now, most people, if they buy a car brand new, they're not going to be there to experience all of this. But the second, the third owner, they're going to be the ones who are going to have to pay all this money to keep their car up and running. If you just look at some of the older BMWs, you know what I mean. And so I just couldn't give it more than a 5.5. And this is where the 3 Series loses because the A-Class also gets a 6 because, again, just as comfortable, less to maintain. But the technology for this car that they gave this car is just an unbelievable amount of technology that they gave this entry-level budget kind of car. They just gave it pretty much everything. This is way better than the CLA, so why would you pay like $700 or so more dollars when the interior is what you're going to be in the most? Now, I admit, I was kind of harsh on the A-Class, but you're going to spend most of your time in the interior, and most people who are buying this, they probably don't really care about the 0 to 60 time, but still, again, reliability, all these cars are German, and all of these things happen with all the cars, and I couldn't bring myself to give it more than a 6, because comfort isn't top-notch, technology isn't top-notch, quality is pretty high, all of them are pretty high, but they're not top-notch. So finally, the totals and the winners. Now, if you are paying attention, you may have added this up yourself. The A3 has a 39 out of 70, meaning it's a pretty good car. Not the best car, but a pretty good car. The 3 Series gets a 40 out of 70, beating it out by just 1 point. And then the A-Class gets a 35 out of 70, meaning that unless you absolutely have to, don't get the A-Class. The A-Class, now, all of these cars are good cars. They all look nice, they all feel nice, they're all reliable. But the 3 Series, if you're wanting the best car for your money, the 3 Series is probably the best because it offers more tech, it offers better fuel economy, better power, it's quicker, it's pretty much everything that you'd want in a budget car. You're getting it in this. The only downside is that it costs a lot to fix and that it's just a little too expensive. 40 grand for a base 3 Series. I think we're pushing it a little bit there. So there's that. The A3, it's a nice car, but you're not getting everything that you may want for your money. Now, all of these cars, none of these cars are going to give you everything that you want for your money because they're not ultra luxury cars. But I mean, if you have a budget of maybe $30,000, you don't really want to spend more than maybe 33, 34, then yeah, I can see you getting an A-Class. But if you have a budget of about 40 grand, get the 3 Series because honestly, if you're buying it brand new, the only thing you're going to have to worry about is oil changes and gas. If you're buying it brand new and you plan on selling it in 3 or 4 years, you're not gonna have to be the one to fix everything and to have to pay all that money. All you're doing is losing about 60 grand in depreciation in about half an hour. And then, like I said, the A3, it's a nice nimble car. If you want a lot of stuff for your money, but you don't want all the BMWs and you don't want all the hassles and the trouble with BMW, the Audi A3 is a pretty nice decision as well. And so I guess this all just boils down to what your personal preferences are, what you can afford, and what you'll do with your car. If you don't really care about 0 to 60s, and if you don't really care about all that stuff, the A class is probably the best because it has the best technology and it's pretty much the class leader for technology and the best interior out of all of these cars. The 3 Series, it gives you more power, better fuel economy, but you're having to pay more for it. And then the A3, it's a nice middle. It's a nice middle car. You may want something like a 3 Series, but you may not be able to afford a 3 Series. But you also don't want 0 to 60. A Corolla can beat that. So, you may get the A3. But like I said, it all depends on what your money can buy you. Because honestly, all of these cars are good in each and every one of their ways. And I mean, they all have their pros, they all have their cons, obviously, because none of them got perfect 70s. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.